LeBron James says that he is signing with the Philadelphia 76ers, bringing the NBA's biggest offseason storyline to a close.
LeBron James has finally revealed the exact tactical reasons behind his choice to join the Sixers. When he spelled out his decision, many analysts did not expect him to focus so heavily on the team half-court spacing and fit. Mouth. After months of speculation and rumors, with media outlets linking his playmaking skills to almost every franchise in the league, LeBron sat down to break down the mechanics of his decision. What he said reframed how we view his modern game. This was not about payroll. It was not about market size, nor was it about hunting massive media markets. It was not about brand leverage or visibility. This was about finding the perfect on-court basketball geometry. This decision only makes sense when you analyze where his physical limitations meet his high basketball IQ at this stage. He is still chasing championship rings, which requires specific half-court spacing. There were major on-court, structural basketball reasons behind this choice. Beyond legacy and front office stability, when you line up the structural roster fit, this decision was highly logical. Philadelphia was not just a solid landing spot. It was the only roster configuration that made perfect sense for his spacing requirements. By the time we break this down, you will understand the deep schematic genius behind this decision. To appreciate why the Philadelphia 76ers became the target, we'll have to look at his chaotic free agency process. From the precise moment he started exploring schematic fits outside of Los Angeles, the entire structure of the NBA landscape shifted. Standard league press conferences became background noise, and other key roster transactions felt completely secondary. Every analyst and scout wanted to know where LeBron would deploy his elite scion through the final phase of his career. The sports media cycle ran completely non-stop, analyzing how his heavy offensive workload would translate to various contending systems. Reports linked him to Golden State, where his passing and gravity alongside Stephen Curry would create historic off-ball spacing advantages. Miami surfaced repeatedly, with analysts debating how his late-career defensive rotations would fit into the Heat-demanding defensive system. The Heat organization made a hard push to run back their old pick-and-roll heavy offensive system, aiming for a full-circle reunion in South Beach. Cleveland entered the conversation, alongside Minnesota, where their specific double-big lineup could have shielded his weak-side help defense. But for weeks, no rival scout could predict his destination with certainty, leaving analysts debating which system fits him best. Then, the 76ers finalized the contract, stopping the rumors and changing the defensive hierarchy of the Eastern Conference instantly. He signed a 2-year contract, putting LeBron in a Sixers uniform to anchor their complex half-court offensive execution. That decision resolved everything, making the rest of the league's defensive roster adjustments feel totally reactive. But to understand why, we have to look at a deeper level of overall basketball design and analyze his evolving late-career on-court demands. He needed specific teammate profiles. More than 20 years into a career that produced 4 championships, his needs have changed. 4 most valuable player awards, and an advanced statistical footprint of high playmaking efficiency that has virtually no comparable modern equivalent. LeBron James is no longer the high-flying transition threat he was at age 22. That is simply a tactical reality. His entire game has shifted heavily toward hunting defensive mismatches and manipulating gravity. His processing of complex coverages has evolved beyond casual fan comprehension. Casual viewers do not fully appreciate this. The peak athlete who carried Cleveland through isolation-heavy sets to a title against a 73-win Golden State defense was a different player. He had to control almost every single half-court possession. He initiated the offense, anchored the help defense, and absorbed physical contact because their spacing was poor. That high level of singular on-ball dominance is extraordinarily taxing on a player, even someone with his elite physical build. LeBron manages his physical load better than almost anyone in league history. This time, he looked for a different schematic setup. He did not want to carry the entire offensive load himself. He needed teammates who could consistently create high-quality shots on their own. He needed dynamic playmakers to share the creation burden, allowing him to conserve valuable energy off-ball and save his legs for the postseason. The goal was clear and non-negotiable: win another title. But to execute that, he required a very specific ecosystem. He required an established roster with elite gravity. He needed secondary scoring threats who could break down defenses on their own. He needed stars to bend opposing defensive shells, removing the pressure of having to run every single half-court possession himself. He did not want to be a franchise savior. He needed the 76ers. Their appeal was not just about cap space. Philadelphia attracted him because of the existing talent already on the floor, specifically the dominant post presence of Joel Embiid. Add Tyrese Maxey's transition speed and Jaylen Brown, acquired from Boston, who brings two-way wing depth and championship-level defense. They added pedigree to a roster built for immediate contention, establishing a highly versatile defensive infrastructure. Their front office spent the summer acquiring key complementary wing defenders and shooters, rather than waiting passively for the market to settle. LeBron was not stepping into a massive roster teardown. He joined a veteran squad already built to compete at the highest postseason level. They just needed one more half-court piece to push them over. That tactical distinction matters immensely to an aging superstar. It matters because the most exhausting task for a star of his caliber is having to drag an unbalanced, poorly spaced roster into the playoff bracket by hunting mismatches and playing heavy, exhaustive isolation basketball. He has carried that heavy, isolation-heavy load before. He knows how it wears down his physical stamina, and he wanted no part of it. Philly offered a completely different setup. They gave him a real tactical foundation, and no single element of that roster setup altered his decision-making process more than playing alongside Joel Embiid. When you talk to league personnel, coaches, scouts, and coordinators about what makes Embiid a nightmare to match up with, they keep pointing to one key factor: gravity. The defensive attention he commands in the paint forces opponents to compromise their spacing. They have to commit help defenders before the ball is even entered into the block. When he catches down low, double teams are triggered immediately. That is a tactical necessity. You cannot leave a 7-foot center who has a complete face-up game to work one-on-one on the block and expect to hold your ground over a 7-game postseason series. So opponents send extra help. Opponents sink into the paint, scrambling their rotations, and that collapse completely warps the floor geometry in a way that is highly advantageous to a player with LeBron's court vision and passing accuracy. James has always been at his most lethal when opposing defenses are scrambling in recovery, when perimeter closeouts are desperate, and when weak side help defenders find themselves caught in no man's land. That is when his ability to dissect weak side help rotations, anticipate passing lanes, and hit spot-up shooters perfectly on the move becomes an indefensible elite weapon. The big man generates that exact brand of defensive distress on almost every possession. Sharing the court with him is not just a personnel upgrade. It is a structural spacing advantage that alters his workload, meaning he does not have to initiate everything. Beyond that, there is another aspect of Embiid's impact that often gets overlooked: elite interior rim protection. When LeBron can attack the rim off downhill screen and roll action, knowing that if he gets beat, a 7-foot defensive anchor with shot-blocking ability has his back, it completely alters his aggressiveness. It shifts his defensive risk tolerance and alters how he attacks the lane. Having that level of backline shot blocking allows LeBron to gamble more on the perimeter, knowing there is safety waiting right under the basket. Think about how often over his last few seasons LeBron was forced to act as the primary pick-and-roll ball handler on one end and the main help side low-block defender, because his rosters lacked the defensive length or playmaking depth to handle those roles. That heavy two-way workload drains his physical reserve. It limits recovery times and demands that a player compete at peak intensity on both ends of the floor night after night without relief. In Philly, Embiid anchors the drop coverage and interior defense, allowing LeBron to conserve his energy and choose exactly where to expend his athletic bursts. That does not marginalize his role. It is a strategic preservation of his capabilities for the clutch moments in late-game situation. Postseason basketball favors the healthy, and this roster layout keeps him fresh for deep playoff runs, which directly impacts their title odds. Then, of course, you have Tyrese Maxey. If Embiid is the half-court focal point making them attractive, Maxey is the transition engine who pushes their pace into high gear. What Maxey brings, especially compared to almost any other young guard in the conference, is high-level shot creation that does not depend on a single primary playmaker constantly controlling the ball. He does not rely on setup passes from LeBron. He does not need heavy pick-and-roll sets drawn specifically for him. He gets downhill, creates clean pull-up opportunities, and scores efficiently at all three levels, drawing heavy defensive attention on every single possession. For LeBron, having a secondary dynamic threat like that is massive. The most overlooked hurdle for an aging star is pacing his physical energy across a grueling 82-game regular season schedule, while keeping enough stamina in reserve for the playoffs, where defense tightens up and individual half-court possessions hold immense weight. Maxey lets LeBron pace himself in ways that were simply impossible during his recent seasons playing in Los Angeles. When LeBron is load managing, keeping his legs fresh, and limiting his transition sprints, Maxey can shoulder that heavy scoring burden without their half-court offensive efficiency falling off a cliff. On nights when LeBron takes over in the clutch minutes, Maxey's perimeter shooting threat prevents opponents from overloading the strong side to stop a single driver player. What makes Maxey's presence particularly significant is how he alters defensive priorities, pulling defenders out past the three-point line. Every defense entering a game against Philadelphia has to account for three distinct primary threats, forcing constant coverage adjustments at the same time. You cannot drop coverage against Maxey without surrendering clean, rhythm-look three-pointers. You cannot double-team Embiid in the low post without giving Maxey a wide lane to attack downhill. And you cannot commit help rotations to either area without leaving LeBron James on the weak side, where his elite skip passes will dissect your recovering defenders instantly. That is a completely unsolvable defensive dilemma, and it is the exact type of matchup nightmare that only gets built when highly compatible, elite player profiles are layered together within a modern spacing framework. Together, the chemistry they establish forces opposing coaching staffs into impossible compromises. Maxey's end-to-end speed makes him impossible to contain in early transition. LeBron's physical profile prevents defenses from switching smaller wings onto him in half-court sets. Embiid makes both of those threats far worse because his interior gravity commands extra defensive resources before a pass is even thrown. There is no easy tactical solution. No recovery rotation can account for all three offensive focal points simultaneously, and that is precisely the standard of roster construction that anchors deep playoff runs. Beyond their three primary creators, the supporting cast flanking this core elevates Philadelphia from a standard contender to a real title favorite. Spot-up shooters keep the floor spaced. Versatile wing defenders switch seamlessly across multiple positions, and a reliable bench preserves leads while resting the stars, without demanding LeBron play 40 demanding minutes every single game. This tactical depth becomes crucial in May and June when physical playoff battles turn into wars of attrition, exposing thin rotations under the pressure of targeted game plans. LeBron's elite court vision and manipulation of passing lanes have always elevated his teams, but those elite playmaker skills translate even more effectively when his targets can capitalize on the advantages he creates. Spot-up shooters punish collapsing defenses, and active cutters timing their backdoor runs perfectly to exploit sleeping defenders, while length on the perimeter reduces the defensive work that LeBron must handle on the other side of the floor. Philadelphia's roster structure delivers exactly that balance, and it does so without forcing LeBron to constantly cover up defensive holes or playmaking gaps elsewhere on the court. The tactical philosophy in Philadelphia also deserves recognition. Their system is built to maximize individual player gravity rather than forcing personnel into rigid, predictable offensive patterns that stifle flow. For players who possess elite spatial awareness and basketball intelligence, on par with LeBron, playing inside a system designed for rapid read and react decision, rather than static, highly scripted play calls, is the optimal setup. He does not need sideline instruction to dissect how the defense is shifting. He requires a system that trusts him to read defensive rotations on the fly and deliver the ball. And that exact strategic trust is woven into how Philadelphia structures their entire half-court offense. The version of LeBron James that Philadelphia has built around does not need 28 field goal attempts to exert major control over the game. The box score he produces will naturally look different than his stats from a decade ago. His overall usage rate will decline, and his scoring average might not lead the roster. None of that matters because how he alters defensive geometry on the court has never been solely about raw scoring. The sharpest defensive coordinators in the league have always recognized that reality. In Philadelphia, LeBron can manipulate defensive coverage without dominating the ball. He can dictate play across 40-minute stretches while personally registering only 8 points himself, yet remain the most impactful force on the court through his passing accuracy, his screening, the gravity he commands at the top of the key, and how he pre-rotates defenders to free up his teammates. That seasoned version of LeBron, acting as a high-post hub, an on-court chess player who saves his burst for hunting late-game mismatches in the fourth quarter, is the most valuable asset for a championship run because it limits fatigue and keeps him fresh. When he chooses to hunt his own shot, the strategic impact is felt in highly targeted ways that younger, high-volume versions of him could not match. When the other potential destinations are analyzed, none of them present such a perfectly balanced tactical picture. Golden State was an intriguing schematic possibility. Imagining LeBron running high pick and rolls with Stephen Curry captured the attention of the basketball world. You had two defining stars of their generation, whose combined perimeter gravity would have broken defensive schemes, sharing the floor before wrapping up their legendary careers. Yet the fatal flaw was not the star fit. The problem lay in the surrounding roster construction. Hard capping the payroll to build that partnership would have required major depth sacrifices, stripping away the versatile, multi-positional defenders needed to survive grueling defensive series in the Western Conference. The hard roster math never quite added up, and LeBron clearly recognized that issue. Miami was different structurally but presented similar, limited in half-court execution. The Heat organization's desire to bring him back was real, and the emotional pull of returning to the franchise where he won his first 2 championships was real. Yet, evaluating their spacing and roster honestly, against the elite defensive rotations in the Eastern Conference, presented serious spacing limitations that loyalty alone could not solve. LeBron deeply respected what that city meant to his career, but he just could not convince himself that the path to another title ran through South Beach in 2025. Philadelphia offered spacing none of the other contenders could replicate, giving him immediate, established rim protection without significant roster construction. The defensive foundation was already built, and their star offensive spacing was established. The organizational commitment to winning was already demonstrated. All they lacked was an elite playmaking hub, and LeBron filled that exact void. The front office's strategic roster pitch during recruitment told LeBron something vital about how they structured their basketball, team culture, and on-court priorities. This was not a front office pitching future picks, but rather a franchise showing their immediate on-court capability. Their tactical conversations were detailed, defining a clear team scheme and a firm commitment to competing for titles immediately, avoiding any developmental detours or long-term rebuilding phases. For a highly experienced veteran player who has already spent years on teams where rebuilding timelines wasted prime on-court championship windows, that tactical directness and roster urgency carried massive weight. What LeBron adds to Philadelphia's half-court offensive spacing is highly obvious to anyone who studies professional basketball film. What he brings inside the film rooms, defensive huddles, and during intense daily team training sessions across every single competitive defensive and offensive drill is much harder to measure but is far more critical at this specific point in the team's championship cycle. Joel Embiid is already one of the most dominant scorers on the interior. Young star guard Tyrese Maxey is quickly becoming a premier perimeter spacing threat in the East. Still, neither of them has won a championship ring. Neither of them has experienced the specific high-leverage defensive pressure that deep postseason basketball creates when half-court offensive execution is tied and the entire season is at stake. LeBron has played through those scenarios so many times that high-pressure execution is second nature to him. His presence totally resets the tactical focus of that locker room in ways that sideline coaching cannot match. The standard he demands in training, the deep on-court experience he draws on in team film sessions, and the late-game composure he displays when offensive execution breaks down and defensive panic begins to set in, those leadership traits transfer. They lift the performance of surround players in ways that box score metrics can never capture. Younger players, sharing defensive rotations with LeBron James, do not just gain a veteran teammate. They receive a complete graduate education in what on-court execution actually demands. The mental preparation, physical maintenance, and the deep understanding of how to manage a grueling season and enter the playoffs with enough physical stamina to perform at a high on-court level. That veteran poise has undeniable value that the Philadelphia front office carefully factored into their on-court calculation of what this roster addition meant for their championship timeline. When the signing officially broke, the entire basketball world reacted instantly. The strategic consensus among lead analysts, front office executives, and former players was nearly uniform in one specific area. Philadelphia instantly emerged as the most dangerous half-court threat in the Eastern Conference. The pairing of LeBron's sharp floor mapping, Embiid's interior offensive gravity, and Maxey's relentless transition scoring threat created a dynamic half-court roster profile that left opposing coaches with zero easy defensive answers. Analysts who were previously cautious about picking the Sixers as elite defensive and offensive contenders before this trade suddenly found themselves building detailed cases for why this squad was the clear Eastern favorite. Still, skeptics remained, as always, raising logical questions about LeBron's age, along with his lateral defensive movement and overall durability across a full regular season. Analysts wondered if a perimeter forward with so many career minutes could still actively execute physical defensive closeouts and rotations at the level required when playoff series reach tight final minutes in late June. Those tactical concerns are highly legitimate and worth analyzing, honestly, but they must be carefully measured against the reality that an elite, high IQ playmaker like LeBron James, when placed in the proper half-court scheme, still remains one of the most formidable basketball minds and pick-and-roll playmakers the league has ever seen. In Philadelphia, he steps into an ideal court floor layout. Instantly, the balance of power in the Eastern Conference shifted the moment this transaction was finalized. Opposing teams that structured their defensive rosters around a specific set of pick-and-roll defensive coverage assumptions now find themselves completely recalculating. The road to the NBA Finals runs directly through Philadelphia in a strategic way it never did before this signing. Every single rival contender in the conference is aware of that shift. The overall legacy dimension of this massive choice requires honest examination because it remains fully inseparable from who LeBron James is and how seriously he analyzes his place in basketball history. Securing a fifth ring would not just add a stat to his resume. It adds a chapter to an already historic career, making his final run even more legendary. Winning that fifth championship, this time with a fourth distinct franchise, adding to a list of cities that includes Cleveland, Miami, and Los Angeles, would achieve something no player in NBA history has ever done. LeBron is fully locked into his unique historical standing. He has always tracked it. That awareness of legacy, which dictates every major career decision, is not about vanity. It is a competitive framework. He measures himself against the greatest who have ever stepped onto the floor, making moves to match. Heading to Philadelphia was not just about finding a productive half-court ecosystem. It was about finding a scheme where the ultimate postseason goal was highly viable, within grasp. Think about what bringing a championship banner to the city of Philadelphia would actually mean. Philadelphia would represent. The 76ers have not captured the Larry O'Brien Trophy since 1983. 43 years of brutal playoff exits, of stacked rosters failing to finish the drive, of a loyal fan base experiencing heartbreak and crushing late-game collapses. LeBron understands this painful history. He knows what delivering a title to this starving sports town would represent, both for his own resume and for everyone who calls Philadelphia home. Title runs belong to organizations, but they also belong to cities. That reality is not lost on a superstar who designs his entire career footprint around the cities he represents. High expectations around this roster construction and ceasing are massive. The 76ers are fully expected to battle for the Eastern Conference crown. Deep postseason runs are mandatory. The championship bar is what this front office built the roster to clear. And failing to reach the finals means falling short of the raw ceiling this lineup possesses. Managing his regular season floor time will be a priority. His on-court shifts must be capped. High mileage back-to-backs on the road will serve as prime opportunities for active rest, preserving his physical output for intensive, half-court playoff basketball. The coaching staff knows the 82-game schedule is merely prep, not the ultimate goal. Entering the postseason, fully healthy, advancing past tough drop coverages in later rounds with legs, and reaching the final stage with a group that is not worn down by months of high usage wear and tear. That is the blueprint. And it is a strategy tailored around how their primary playmaker must operate to maximize this roster ceiling. When you assess the entire picture, mapping out every scheme, every transition asset, and every roster variable, the outlook is perfectly logical. He picked Philly because Joel Embiid offers elite rim protection and interior scoring gravity, which makes every perimeter threat more dangerous. Plus, Tyrese Maxey is a dynamic downhill ball handler who can spearhead a half-court run independently, relieving the veteran playmaker of heavy offensive creation duties. Meanwhile, the supporting cast is built to knock down open corner three-pointers generated by drive and kick sequences. Because the coaching staff deploys a fluid flow offense based on reading weak-side defensive rotations rather than running rigid sets. Because the front office chose to maximize their current championship window instead of hoarding future draft assets, since the roster was already well-spaced and ready to match up defensively. He needed to join an elite squad, not construct one from scratch, and because behind these tactical fits, a major legacy incentive tied the whole plan together. He wants one more ring, one final chance to exit the court victorious. Choosing the 76ers was not a move that casual NBA fans saw coming. They were not the headline-grabbing, small ball perimeter pairing that Golden State offered, nor was it the nostalgic homecoming story that Miami represented. But they were the right basketball fit, the tactical fit, the legacy fit, the longevity fit. What LeBron James did when he signed with Philadelphia is exactly what he has always done at crucial career turning points. He evaluated the roster honestly, tuned out the noise, analyzed the on-court geometry, and made the optimal choice. This signing has the potential to become the defining final chapter of his historic career, not because Philadelphia offers the flashiest market or because the narrative is the most cinematic path on the table, but because the spacing, defense, and half-court geometry give him his ultimate path to accomplish the one thing he is still chasing. If this newly constructed roster clicks, utilizing high-gravity shooters to survive a grueling Eastern Conference, scrambling on defensive rotations to reach the finals as LeBron intends, it proves his tactical floor mapping still works near the end of an unprecedented career. LeBron James still knows exactly how to manipulate opposing defensive shells. Now we want to hear your analysis. Do you believe this Philadelphia core can balance floor spacing and defensive switching to win a title with LeBron James running the point? Or do you think this roster still lacks the half-court execution or defensive versatility to win it all? Drop your breakdown in the comments below, because this analytical breakdown is just getting started. If you have not subscribed to the channel yet, do it now, because this tactical puzzle is going to develop all season long, and you do not want to be the last to see how these adjustments play out.